because we don't need her to be on YouTube right now.
You clicked on it?
It's not there yet.
You still haven't come into our studio
Yeah,
yet.
we'll know when. All right, tell you what, I'm here.
What's up? She's not there. She should be just clicking be in and
Yeah, all she has to do is
seconds.
click and be, and that's not on our end at all. It's just
You sure the link is live?
100%.
How you doing, Celeste?
There she is. We got this.
Oh, she's in there now?
She is now.
Oh, you're in there
Oh,
now. Yeah, you're in there.
I'm there now.
Okay. Okay. So now we can hear you and now we can see you.
I know. I can see you too.
Right. So now, if you were to ask Doc Robinson a question, like,
Ask me a question.
Look, you're not, when she asked me a
Ask me a
question,
question.
ask him anything.
Congratulations on your new podcast, Dr. Robinson. How do you feel about it?
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful. And I look forward to giving out concise and good information to people.
She's here.
And we look forward to hearing from you also.
Okay, that's wonderful. Ask me something specific.
she's here. So you're gonna look,
Okay.
you're gonna talk
What
to her
is the
next, or
goal
go
of
over
your
there?
podcast?
That's a good question. Well, I'll give you a little history behind it. Uh, I've always been a person that liked to gather and know a lot of information. And I remember I had a good friend, a man named Sam Evans. And Sam Evans used to say, I don't know what to say about you. He says, why are you sitting there with all of the information that you have locked in your head and you're not sharing it with anyone? And that sort of hit a nerve with me. So, one of the things that I'm trying to do with this podcast is to share some of the experiences and knowledge that I have accumulated over time, and that people can use that information to make their lives more productive and happier.
That'll be wonderful. Wonderful. So, your audience is going to be multi generational?
Oh, most certainly. Everyone is welcome to the Insightful Journal. And we welcome people from all different aspects of their lives, you know, and we just try to give out information that will be impactful and that make a difference.
One of the things that we're doing here is we're promoting house calls, and just a little bit of background. Dr. Robinson does a show called Insightful Journal, which is up on the website, and there he gets into more highbrow intellectual discussions. But here on House Calls, we're going to be talking about issues that pertain to people when they call in. So, Celeste, do you have a question about health where Doctor can we can get into his deep knowledge?
Well,
Maybe even in your own experience.
well, the question I have, Doc, is how can I get my cholesterol level down without having to be on Lipitor?
Okay, that's a very good question. So let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, what is the cholesterol level? What are we dealing with? Your total
Without, wait a minute,
cholesterol.
I am on atorvastatin.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
now before I got on it, my cholesterol level was about 257, 258.
Okay. And what is it now that you're on the
It
statin?
hovers around 157.
Okay, 157. Okay. So now, this is the issue. We like to try to get the cholesterol, total cholesterol, below 200. So you're doing pretty good if it's down to 157. But the issue is that you're asking me, and this is a very relevant issue, can you get similar results without doing the statin?
Correct.
Okay. And the answer is yes, that is possible. So now let me ask you a couple of other questions. What is the ratio of your lipids? Because you have like something called low density, you have high density, and it makes a difference where they are. For example, what is your high density as opposed to your low density lipoproteins?
Oh, you want to know the actual numbers?
Well,
Now,
you can
Doc,
give
I
me a
don't have that
ballpark,
right
or
here
like
in
it's
front
like
of me.
one is high and one is low. I mean, but did you have like a high HDL and a low VDL,
Yes,
or
I had a high HDL, yes.
okay? Well, that's good then, because the HDL offers protective benefits, even though the total cholesterol can be high. If you have a good amount of HDL, then that has an impact in terms of the disease process that is being caused by the high cholesterol level. So now, here's a couple of other things. Do you have a history in terms of your family of having something called hypercholesterolemia? Like, did anybody in your family have high cholesterol that you know about?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, so yours is probably essential. Okay, now how about your weight? Have you maintained a good weight, or have you been overweight?
No, I'm overweight.
Okay, as most Americans are.
I
Most
know.
Americans are overweight. So here we go. That's the first thing that we can do. Okay. And the first thing that we can do is to try to lower your weight to its normal. And now that depends on what they call a BMI. So what you want to do is you want to go and have your BMI checked. And with that measurement, it can tell you what percentage you are over the average or normal weight for a person that is your age, that has your body build, and so forth. Okay. That being said, very small changes in your lifestyle can have a remarkable impact on the cholesterol. Because if it's not a familiar cholesterol, that means that you're getting the cholesterol from external or exogenous sources. So it's a basic principle. If you don't add the fuel or the fat that's needed to make the cholesterol high, it's going to go down, just as a matter of principle. So I would say that the first thing that you could do is to look at your diet and try to modify your diet so that you are not getting as much cholesterol. What a lot of people do, which makes an immediate impact, is they move away from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet by cutting out meats, pork, those issues. That'll make a major difference in terms of lowering your cholesterol. So what I would suggest you do is, have you ever worked with a dietitian, or do you have a source of someone that you're working with
No,
to
I
help
haven't
you
worked with
to
a
make those
dietitian. I have
choices?
just been discussing it with my primary physician.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah, maybe
all
you may.
she said, well, lose a couple pounds and get
That's
off
right.
cheese, get off shrimp and lobster, which is my
Right.
favorite. She's telling me
Okay.
to
It's
do it
high
through
in
diet.
cholesterol. Well, we're saying the same thing, but I'm trying to figure out how you accomplish that. So, it's just like going to the gym. Okay, now everybody know that we're supposed to be doing some exercise. And some way we don't end up getting there to do the exercise. I'm even the same way myself. I know I'm supposed to be doing exercise and going to the gym and stuff like that. And it's always some excuse for why I don't get there. So basically what I'm saying is that you can get support or help from someone else, a coach. It's just like if you would go to a gym or something and you have like a trainer or someone like that, and they encourage you. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of people do it by joining groups, or they have like programs that they do, and the people look at each other and say, well, what did you do this week, and did you eat less fat, and so forth. So that's what I mean when I think in terms of trying to get some external help to help you. You get that?
It's easier said than done, Doc.
I know
And
it.
and 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 I'm going to and another thing, I think my challenge is, Doc, I'm 74 years old. So
Well, it's never too
trying to
late.
get that weight down is much easier said than done. no matter how hard I exercise.
Oh, that is not going to do it in itself. It's a whole concerted effort of many things you have to do. And
Okay.
you see, now another thing that a lot of people make a big mistake is that they try to starve themselves or they try to lose weight all of a sudden or dramatically. It doesn't work that way because you see, your body is very smart. So if you starve your body will actually store more fat. So many times people, and they call it the yo-yo diet. So they'll lose weight, but then when the body says, "Oh, you're starving me," then it'll take every bit of fat it can and store it, and then you'll gain all of the weight back. So the whole secret to losing weight is that you have to do it very slowly, and it can't be anything special. I don't even like the term diet because what you basically have to do is just adopt a lifestyle where you eat that way all the time, and it's not anything special that you do. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be done very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So what I suggest for people to do is don't try to do it all in one day, but just make some minor changes each time. One thing is cut the portion of the food that you eat. Get a smaller plate. Try to stay away from fats like butter and don't fry your food. Bake the food. Take the skin off of the chicken if you're going to eat a piece of chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Just do little things.
Mm-hmm.
And that will, over time, add up. Because what you have to realize is you didn't get overweight overnight. It took a long time for you to get to the state where you are now, and it's going to take some time for you to get back to a normal, healthy weight.
Well, I'm gonna
But
be
like
honest
they
with you,
say,
Doc. Okay, I'll be honest with you, Doc. My weight started really when I started going through menopause.
yes,
And that's when I started the weight gain because my husband always says, he said, I haven't changed my eating pattern. He says, what is causing the weight gain? And I said, it started back with menopause. Even though
right,
I had my children late in life, I still didn't get heavy. But once
yes,
menopause kicked in, oh,
right.
Doc.
You know why? Your metabolism changed.
Yes, yes,
Slowed down. So
yes.
you're not burning the calories. So you're right. You're probably eating the same amount of calories that you ate before, but now your metabolism is much lower. So that's the reason why you're gaining the weight. And that's a
Mm-hmm,
normal occurrence. As you get older, your metabolism slows down.
mm-hmm.
You're going to have less activity, but also your metabolism is going to slow down.
One of the things in listening to Dr. Robertson and you, Celeste, is you got to be aware that as we age, our bodies change dramatically, and that impacts how much energy you need to take in because food is energy. So we need to sometimes very successfully and adequately change our eating habits as we
Yes.
get older. They talk about in America, a good diet is 2,000 calories or 2,400 calories. But once you get past about 60, you're down to about 1,500 calories,
1,200 for
and
a
even
woman. Yeah.
down to as low as 1,200. And
Mm-hmm.
getting down that low can often be a challenge if you're sticking anywhere close to the American diet. So
That's
Celeste, I
very
want to
true.
thank you very much. And that was some good questions and some good information, Doc.
Okay. Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for your knowledge.
Thank you for your question.
Thank
Okay.
you, Celeste.
You're welcome.
Doc,
Okay.
obesity is a big problem in America.
One of the biggest problems that we face in America is
That's one
obesity.
reason why some of these statin drugs are the largest selling drugs because half the damn population is on them.
That's true.
I mean, all the population is over 50 is darn near taking some sort of
Listen,
statin.
there's a lot of people overweight in America, and it's more the norm than it is the exception. But you see, I think that where we are with medicine today is that everybody expects the doctor to have the cure. And I always try to tell people the cure is not with the doctor, the cure is with you.
Doc, now speaking of cures for this whole obesity epidemic, they got some real popular obesity drugs out there now. And they got states like in Kentucky or Tennessee or whatever, they got people lining up to get this stuff. Man, what is with this stuff? Because from what I've heard, it doesn't really change your weight that much, like a 10% difference.
Well, it has a minor impact, but even with all of those drugs, if you read the insert and the instructions that go along with it, it has to be done with a lifestyle change as well. There's really no secret drug at this point for obesity.
Mhm.
There are aids. They'll help you. It's actually, you know what it's like? It's like smoking cigarettes.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can go and get a patch, and you
Mhm.
get a nicotine patch, you can get gum, you can get all sorts of things to help you
Right.
to stop smoking the cigarettes.
Right.
But in the final analysis, you're the one who say, "I'm not going to smoke anymore,"
Right.
and give it up. It's just like with obesity.
It's just like that. You know, when I think about the obesity epidemic in America, I think about how much time people spend in front of their televisions. Because I kid you not, when I look at, and I look at sports, not a lot, but I look at sport. And sports programming, which much of it is, it used to be just targeted to men, but now it's targeted to men and women. At least half of the commercials are go eat, 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 eat. And the foods that are being promoted there are high in fat.
Yes, salt, sugar, and fat. Those are
Yeah.
the three ingredients of a good tasting food.
So even if you're going like if you're tailgating at something, you're putting that stuff into your system, and you just watching TV, you're putting in that stuff into your system. You know,
And the fried foods. People love fried food.
it tastes.
You know, so it's fried chicken, it's fried fish, it's fried, you know.
Have the hot sauce and
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that I've done, and it really cuts a lot of the fat out, is I got me one of those air fryers. And so now instead of, because I like the crunchy
Mhm.
texture, but you can get that crunchy texture now without using any oil at all. You can cook it in an air fryer, and that gives it the crunchy taste.
Now, what is different? And air frying is different in what technology?
Well, it doesn't use grease
Mhm.
or deep frying. So, like when you fry chicken or fried fish,
Mhm.
you immerse the chicken in a vat of
Right,
fat.
right,
Okay,
right.
and you know, we've tried to make the fats more healthier. I mean, I think they did away with trans fats are illegal
Mhm.
now. And there are some fats that are better than other fats.
I remember when lard was popular back in the.
Oh, I remember with my Aunt Gladys. She
Mhm.
used to cook fried chicken in lard.
Yeah.
And that was the best chicken ever. That's lost popularity.
Yeah.
So even my sister now, she uses like canola oil or something
Mhm.
like that. But still, it's a lot of oil because
Right.
when you submerge uh, the meat or you know chicken or fish or whatever, it absorbs
Mhm.
a lot of the oil.
Mhm.
In fact, you got to take it and put it on a towel or something,
Mhm.
a paper towel or something, and you look and you can see the grease spot where
Mhm.
you set it to drain the oil out of it.
Mhm.
So just think about all that extra oil that you get
Mhm.
when you prepare the food that way. So with the air fryer, you don't use any oil. You may take like a little atomizer or sprayer
Mhm.
and lightly spray the top
Mhm.
to get the crunchiness better.
Mhm.
But other than that, there's no added oil to it.
Mhm.
So it's much lower in cholesterol and it's much lower in fat and in calories when you
I've
cook it
never
that way.
had air fried chicken, but does it taste any better? Does it? Yeah.
Well, it comes close, but listen, that's more now. So it's not even a close call. You know that fried chicken tastes best. But listen, we got to make some sacrifices if we want to be healthy, right?
Yeah, that's true. In other words, instead of fried chicken once a week, you might go to fried chicken once a month
Yes.
or once every 6
Yeah,
months.
yeah. I'm not a purist,
Mhm.
and so my philosophy in life is that you have to moderate all things
Mhm.
because anything that you do to excess
Mhm.
is bad for you.
Yeah, I remember when I was corporate, and they used to say, drinking was okay in moderation. And there was a bar named Moderation, not around the corner. I would drink it all the time. Go to the bar called Moderation. Yeah.
Yeah, now that's something that you don't want to do if you're trying to lose weight because alcohol is full of calories.
You
And
know,
people don't really understand what a calorie is. So let me explain to you what a calorie is. A calorie is amount of energy.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's defined as the amount of energy needed to raise 1 gram 1 degree at sea level.
Right.
Okay, so that's the definition of a calorie.
Correct.
So literally, what they do is they burn the food, and then they measure the heat that's or the energy that's released from it, and that tells you how many calories in it. So if you are a drinker, you know that when you light a match to alcohol, that's going to make some heavy flames
Oh,
and
yeah.
going to let out a lot of heat.
Oh, yeah.
So you know there's a lot of calories in that.
Yeah, that's why I basically stopped keeping a whole lot of liquor in my house. Because, just having like a 1 or 2 drinks or 2 or 3 drinks throughout the day, that adds
A
easily 600
lot
to
of
800
calories.
calories,
Lot of calories.
almost 15% to 20% to your caloric intake.
Yeah, yeah, and then for the fact the alcohol is actually worse than sugar,
Hmm.
because sugar is really not that energy compact.
Hmm.
Like there's only like about 16 calories in a tablespoon
Hmm.
of teaspoon of sugar.
Right.
But the issue is that sugar has an impact in terms of your metabolism
Right.
because insulin and other things have to regulate it.
Right.
So that's why it's so dangerous that you should not have a lot of sugar,
Right.
because it can throw your system off
So let me
by
say,
having large
between
amounts of it.
sugar, salt, alcohol, how can I live, Doc, with any pleasure in what goes in my mouth?
Well, listen, your body is designed to manage all of those things. That's just a relative amount that you have to. Now, let's just think about it.
Or if I have a drink, as long as I'm not drinking a fifth a day, that'll screw up my liver. I might be all right.
well, listen, I would say one good one.
Okay.
So my friend Sam, he would drink, but he said, listen, he said it's good to have one drink a day.
Mhm.
He said, and I usually have it right before bedtime because it helps me to sleep and relax.
Mhm.
He said, but just one, no more. He says, but make it a good one.
Say this because we have just me on. Conversation is great, everything is great, but remember, you got to keep looking down
Mhm.
and you got to keep saying, hey, because Doc doesn't have any information. He doesn't know how many people are there. Doc doesn't know anything, so he's got to rely on you.
So I got to depend on
So and every now and then, if I really need to send you something, I'm going to send it up and on there. So
Mhm.
just keep your eyes open on that.
Mhm.
But you got to see if we have any viewers.
Mhm.
But remember, when there's viewers there,
Mhm.
you have to keep saying, "Hey, folks, if you got a question for me, you can put it in the chat, or you
Mhm.
can hit that link."
Mhm.
All right. So you got to keep doing that, and don't get because your conversation is great,
Right.
but you're comfortable. You're just boys chilling in a bar right now,
Right.
and that's how we want it.
Right.
All right. But don't get lost in it.
Mhm.
Just keep talking for hours.
Mhm.
But we got a viewer.
Mhm.
There's somebody there. Somebody else is watching. It says 2 now. You see it?
Says 12 here. Wait a minute, or is that just 2?
It's 2.
Yeah, it's 2.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So I'm over here.
Okay, so we have a caller.
No, not a
Mhm.
call. Somebody
Chat.
else is
Chat.
watching. So in the chat, you'll see if someone asked a question in the chat,
Right.
right? And when they hit the link, then they can come on. But you got to let them know.
Mhm.
You can ask a question in the chat or
Mhm.
hit the link,
Mhm.
and I'll see them when they come backstage, and then I'll bring them up.
Okay. Yeah, my battery ran out, I guess. So hold
Okay.
on.
Okay, so if we have anyone in the chat, I see there's a couple of people that I noticed here on the chat. Sign on and you can ask the question. We look forward to hearing from you.
Mhm.
So it's cool. Keep texting people. Keep calling them. Let's just get more people. To talk. Like, share, subscribe. you know, this our debut.
This is our debut. We're trying to figure out how this thing works. So
Yeah. Thank you for joining our test. We'll try it one more time.
All right, so we're down to one.
Okay,
We're down to 1.
We're back. That's you.
Yeah, that's still
Yeah,
me. But
right.
we had somebody,
Right.
and they checked it out, and we lost it.
Right.
So that's what happened. All right, we had them, and they
Right.
went away. They didn't see, much going on.
Mhm.
So that's why you want to keep going. You talk
Mhm.
and you invite. You talk, you invite. Like I say, keep calling people.
Mhm.
Get on the phone, call people. I say, yo, hit that link. I'm gonna text this to you. Go to our YouTube channel. So I texted it to you, Doc, and you can text the link to other people, copy and paste it, send it to people.
Mhm.
So we're keeping it real. We're being 100 transparent, like we have on a website. We want you to see the journey that we're going on, see where we are, and see where we go. We're live, buddy. So Jerome, if somebody were there right
Trying to
now,
get some more people.
right? But you got to keep getting more people while you're still.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
still live.
Yeah, yeah.
We're still live. But just be talking. Say, well, all right, let me see who I can get. Just talk out loud. Let me see if I can get. Oh, I ain't talked to her in a while. You know what I mean?
Got you. We're still live here on YouTube. And if you have a question, hit us up in the chat. And in the chat, you'll see a link that you can come on live. The link is in the chat. And our technical guy is going to stick that link in there right now. So make sure that you can see the link in the chat. And we were sitting here with Dr. Lawrence Robinson doing house calls. House calls is a great little idea that one of our very, very astute producers came up with. And that astute producer is saying, y'all need to keep talking. So I'm not used to running my mouth. I'm quieter.
New message from unknown. Messages.
Yeah. So again, look in the chat if you see Doc Robinson. That's the link, and you can come on in and ask a question to Doc Robinson. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Dr. Robinson right now. Dr. Robinson, when you get up on Thursdays, what kind of wheeling and dealing are you doing? I know that your background is, many of your clients are you deal a lot in the drug addiction area.
Yes, I have a specialty in the area of addiction psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, in Philadelphia, that's a very big issue. We have opioids,
Mm-hmm.
fentanyl, and other types of drugs, which have actually flooded the area.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, they start off just as occasional users and so forth, but these are very addictive medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So they get hooked on it.
Right.
And these are people of all walks of life,
Oh, yeah.
all different economic standards and so
yeah.
forth. It's a myth for people to think that only certain segments of the population are affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a medication which I use, which is called buprenorphine.
Okay.
And it's actually a combination of a opiate and a blocker in the same medicine. So when the person takes this medicine, it prevents them from overdosing
Mm-hmm.
because it blocks the receptors. That's very important
Mm-hmm.
because if you these days they mix this in many different things. It might even not even be what you're thinking that you're getting,
Right.
and it has this fentanyl and these drugs mixed in it,
Right.
and they're very deadly because they're so concentrated
Mm-hmm.
that a very small amount of it can put you in overdose and cause respiratory stop for you from breathing
Mm-hmm.
and could potentially lead to distress
Mm-hmm.
in terms of death. So the people tell me that when they take this medicine, they feel normal for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't feel high and they don't feel withdrawal.
Okay. Now, I'm not familiar with that drug. I mean, I'm familiar with methadone and other drugs designed to slow walk you off of your.
Yeah. Now, as you know, methadone is just another synthetic opiate.
Okay.
So it's just a replacement
Gotcha.
for it.
No.
So you replace the opiate that you're taking with methadone.
It's another rule.
And methadone's got all of the same, profiles, side effects, and you can overdose from methadone as well. Methadone
Okay.
is deadly. It's very strong.
Mm.
Methadone, though, has a longer half-life.
Okay.
So when you take it, it stays in your system longer.
Okay.
So, the street opiates are very short.
Mhm.
in their half-life. There may be like 4 hours or so.
Mhm.
And that's what makes it so bad because then you got to go back and get more to get the same feeling.
Right, right. Now, what's the name of this drug again that you were talking about?
It's called buprenorphine. The trade name for it was Suboxone.
Oh, now I've heard of Suboxone. I've heard of the trade name, but I had not heard of the other one. Is that a plant-derived drug?
All,
Or is it
all, all,
is it
all,
synthetic drug?
all drugs are
Uh-huh.
derived from plants.
Mhm.
Now, of course, it's well modified. This drug was actually invented by the Japanese,
Okay.
who make some really good drugs. So what it is the Suboxone is a analog,
Okay.
meaning that it is similar
Mhm.
to the opiate,
Mhm.
but it has an extremely long half-life.
Oh,
It affects a receptor called the mu receptor. That's probably getting too technical. But needless to say that when you take the Suboxone, it lasts for the entire day. So it has like about a 12-hour half-life,
mhm.
which
Okay.
is very good because you get to a plateau. Then the other thing about it is once you reach that plateau, it attaches to all of the receptors and block them.
Mhm.
So even if you take more of the medicine, it's not going to have a linear effect.
Okay.
So once it reached that plateau, then it doesn't go any higher because of its attraction to the receptor, it blocks and locks into them.
Why isn't this drug more popular?
It is popular. It's very
Oh, it
popular.
is?
Yeah, and a lot of people use it whenever they can't find good heroin.
Okay.
So if there's like a bad batch of heroin or bad drugs on the street, everybody is looking for the buprenorphine because it tides them over
Mhm.
until they can get what they are looking for in terms
Mhm.
of the.
Now, is this drug generally prescribed by many physicians or not?
Well, there's a problem with that.
I kind of thought there might
There are
be.
not a lot of doctors who prescribe it. With all of these class 4 drugs, you have to have a special license
The
by
doctor
the.
has a special license?
Yes, you have to have a
Okay.
special license from the DEA.
Hmm.
Or you can also, if you are a certified or board certified psychiatrist,
Hmm.
you can also prescribe it.
Okay.
So very few people actually have the license
Hmm.
to prescribe it. And one of the things that I found out when I went to a seminar that was sponsored by the DEA, that Pennsylvania as a state has one of the highest number of people who are signed up to prescribe the medicine, but it has the lowest number of people who actually prescribe it.
What do you mean?
So people that sign up for it,
Right.
they don't prescribe it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Why won't they?
There are lots of issues in terms of diversion, uh, the stigma associated with
Hmm.
it, the patient population,
Hmm.
because those patients can be some problems in
Okay.
terms of dealing with them.
Hmm.
Because it's not just giving a drug, because you've got to deal with the psychological implications of it, of drug abuse, very important.
Hmm.
It's just like obesity. You can give a bit, but that's not going to help you. You got to get down to the root cause of what's causing you to eat, and it's the same thing with that. So one of the things that I do, and I think it's actually required by law, is that they are required to have a therapist and psychological
Hmm.
support
Hmm.
as well as the medication. You can't give the medicine just by itself without having these other components
That's why
attached
you're
to it.
saying a psychiatrist is one of the few prescribers.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are a lot of issues in terms of it. But I find that as long as you stick to the guidelines and you do accepted practices and don't go beyond that, you don't get in trouble.
Okay, I'm here with Dr. Lawrence Robinson, the erstwhile administrator of the Philadelphia healthcare system way back when I was a youngster and much more handsome. And we're actually, Philadelphia, the drug problems, man, Kensington is internationally known.
They call it zombie land.
Yeah, zombie land.
Yeah.
Now, are any of those zombies on, on this drug to help them, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah. So this is the thing about it.
Okay, yeah, let's
Okay.
deal with
So I can give you a classic example of one of my patients. Okay. So had a good family, and everything, with no reason for him to be out on the street, buying drugs, but he was. Okay. So he said, I tried the buprenorphine,
Mhm.
and he said, I took it and it really worked. He said, but I couldn't help it. He said, I sold it because I could get more money selling it than I could get, for anything else.
Didn't take it.
So when I got the thing, I knew it would help me if I took it, but I couldn't help it because everybody wanted it and they were willing to give me a good amount of money for it. So now I don't have my buprenorphine, so I had to go out on the street and buy.
Well, quite interesting.
You see what I'm saying?
If you're listening to this conversation, you can hit it up in the chat. And to come on live, perchance, and ask your questions, go up to Doc Robinson in the chat, and you'll see the StreamYard connection there. Go up on that and hit it, and that'll bring you in. But if you have a question, you can always hit it in the chat, and we'd be glad to address it. We're sitting here talking about.
Do you see the question in the chat? Do you have your chat up?
Yeah, so one of the questions is what about medical weed? That's a recent phenomenon in the last 10 years in America. Medical weed. Now, weed has even a higher penetration rate, way higher than cocaine and meth.
Oh, well, more people use it, but
That's what I mean.
it's not as serious a
Mhm.
drug. See, there's actually receptors in the brain for the opiates,
Okay.
and they trigger. They have their own specific places where they attach,
Mhm.
and it's involved with the dopamine system,
Mhm.
which is involved with transmitting neurological symptoms. It has to do with pain. Has to do with pleasure. So these are very severe
Mhm.
attachments for it.
Mhm.
Marijuana is a different
Mhm.
type of drug. Well, it's in a different class
Mhm.
altogether. And
Well, let's say somebody prescribes marijuana. Do they get high while they're trying to heal? Because marijuana has been used.
oh, sure, of course, it has
Okay.
its euphoric effects
Uh-huh.
associated with marijuana.
Mhm.
But marijuana is more a behavioral
Okay.
addiction
Uh-huh.
as opposed to a physical addiction.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, if you are a heavy smoker and you don't have any marijuana,
Mhm.
well, you might feel bad because you don't have the marijuana, but you're not going to go into physical withdrawal.
Right.
It's like alcohol.
Right.
Alcohol, you actually go into
Got you
physical
go into
withdrawal
physical
if you
withdrawal.
don't have it. It's the same with the opiates.
Right.
So the person will have severe problems. They'll have anxiety, their hairs will stand on end, their stomach will become upset. I mean, they will feel horrible
Mhm.
without that medicine.
Mhm.
You don't have that problem with the marijuana. It's more behavioral.
Oh no, interesting. Because when I hear people saying, marijuana is not addictive, but it is addictive.
It's addictive, no doubt about it,
Okay.
but it's psychologically
Right.
addictive as opposed to physically addictive.
Okay.
Whereas as the opiate is physically
Physically
addictive. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because when that withdrawal is no joke,
Yeah.
And I know that some people prefer to go through the withdrawal
Mhm.
rather than using the replacement drugs like
Mhm.
the methadone or the thing. And so I do have a medication which reduces the withdrawal symptoms. It's called Lacirma.
Mhm.
And
Now reduces the withdrawal symptoms
yes,
from
from opiates, from the opiates.
Got it.
Yes, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so some people take that route as well.
Mhm.
They want to go cold turkey or just go through it. And I do have medications that will ease the
Mhm.
symptoms that they have from the
Mhm.
withdrawal.
Mhm. Now, marijuana, does that heal or does it mask? I mean, when I say mask, does it just mask whatever symptoms? Like if you're taking marijuana or smoking marijuana for glaucoma, what's the impact?
Well, it has its direct impact on the disease.
Mhm.
I mean, marijuana has always been used as a medicinal drug. I mean, the American Indians and many cultures have used marijuana as a medicinal drug, and it has its very specific characteristics, which are good.
Mhm.
I mean, for one thing, it's a perfect drug if you have wasting.
Mhm.
So, say you have cancer or something like that, and you've got a poor appetite and you're losing weight.
Right.
Go smoke some reefer. That'll give you the munchies, we used to call it,
Right.
and you would start eating food and feeling, better.
Right.
So I mean, it has its impact
Mhm.
directly on the various diseases.
Okay.
Marijuana affects the wide angle glaucoma.
Okay.
So it actually has an impact on the pressure.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's a direct result.
Mhm.
It's not, like a side as result.
Mhm.
So when you take it, I mean, it has many different psychological benefits as well.
Mhm.
For certain psychiatric diseases, marijuana is very beneficial.
Mhm.
So it's been used for a while.
Mhm.
It was only very recently that it became out of favor and became a controlled substance.
Well, it became a controlled substance about 100 years ago, and the weirdness of it, because way back, I'd say about 20 years ago, C-SPAN did an excellent program on the history of drug abuse in America. They went all the way back to when Coca-Cola had,
Right.
when Coca-Cola had Coke in it, and they talked about marijuana, and marijuana became a Schedule One drug for one very specific reason, and that was to appease the legislature from the South who said black men get high on weed and we can't kill them. I mean, that's really what it came down to. That's really what it came down to. And marijuana was made a Schedule One drug, excuse me, whereas cocaine was made a Schedule Two drug. And
There's no logic in that.
there was logic in it to appease the Southern legislators that were in the House and the Senate to get the bill passed that became, our current federal drug laws, and it's still on the books as a Schedule One, even though most states have legalized marijuana, and that's strictly a money grab, man. They just wanted to get
There are parallels to that in alcohol as well.
right.
Because remember, we went through a period of prohibition.
Prohibition, right.
And alcohol is far more deadly than marijuana
Oh,
in
very much
every
so.
way.
Very much so. Very much so. But alcohol came back, and now you see the commercials for alcohol on television. You didn't see that 25 years ago. You're not even on cable, but now alcohol commercials are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, so that'll basically be the same with marijuana,
Mhm.
because a lot of places now have moved to what we call recreational.
Right.
So they have
Right.
recreational sites where you can buy marijuana and smoke it.
Yeah.
They have decriminalized it in terms
Right.
of penalties associated with it
What
and so
they've
forth.
done is make it so that the financial system you can pay with your credit cards and stuff, because it's still illegal to trade at the federal level. So all these
Well, that's coming.
yeah, well, it's
That's
obviously coming, but
yeah.
it's got to be a change in the federal law, which hasn't really changed yet. Yeah, so that's quite interesting, Doc. Your experience, man, is very, very helpful in what you do in the medical fields. Um, one other area that we're going through right now, and right now we're talking late 2024, is the flu. Now, I've never had a flu vaccine in my life. My first wife used to get it all the time because she was a teacher.
Okay.
I haven't had the flu. The last time I think I had the flu was about 13 years ago. But in the meantime, I've never had a flu vaccine.
Well, I've never had the flu in all of my
Okay.
life. I
Okay.
mean, and I'm pushing 70. So I've never had the flu. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've never actually been sick one day in my life. I
Mhm.
used to have 100% attendance
Mhm.
and things like that. So the flu
Mhm.
is dependent also on your own condition.
Okay.
So people are susceptible to the flu
Right.
based on the medical conditions that they have.
Okay.
So I always tell people, if you have certain conditions, like you have asthma, you got high blood pressure, you got heart disease or so forth, then it's in your interest to take the flu shot
Mhm.
because of your bodies.
Mhm.
Because the flu is, supported by your body's immune or
Right.
system. So if you're a strong and, robust immune system, flu is never going to be a problem for
But
you
why is it that they come up with a different flu vaccine? It seems like every year.
because it changes. You see, there's not one
Is
flu.
that same thing going to happen with COVID?
It's always already the case.
I know it is.
Yeah. These are the same thing with HIV.
Uh-huh.
That's the reason why you can't find a cure for them.
Mhm.
Because if it was a consistent virus, then you could develop a medicine or a immunization that would kill it.
Mhm.
You can't because it changes and it adapts. And every time you have a new medicine, it's going to make a new resistant strain,
Mhm.
which is going to be resistant to
Mhm.
the vaccine. Same thing.
Mhm.
So they're not stable.
Well, then tell me about the measles vaccine and those other vaccines that we used to take when we were children.
They're not as variable.
Okay.
Those diseases are, it's the same thing with hepatitis, for
Mhm.
example. So hepatitis and HIV are very similar viruses in the same
Right.
class.
Right.
But the hepatitis virus, because of the way it replicates,
Mhm.
it doesn't make as many changes in
Okay.
its replication.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So it's a more stable virus. It's also less infectious.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? No, it's more infectious, but than HIV, but it's more stable.
Okay.
Okay, so that means they can develop a antiviral agent now.
Specifically for hepatitis
Yes,
that'll work.
that's right.
Oh,
98.9%. They actually almost have a cure for hepatitis.
okay.
That disease you can come sero negative
Mm.
with the course of medicine.
Mhm. Now, seronegative.
That means you
Okay.
don't have it anymore.
Got
It's
it.
not undetectable, but it's actually cleared from your body.
Okay. Okay.
So I actually suspect that over time we will develop medicines that will be able to clear
Mhm.
the HIV virus from our system, but we're not there yet.
Mhm.
But there are differences in the viruses,
Mhm.
and mainly the fact that the AIDS virus changes
Mhm.
rapidly.
Mhm.
So that's why immunization is not going to work.
Okay. Interesting. You know, we're
And getting to that point, that's also true for influenza. So there are many times, and I'm sure you realize it, where the flu vaccine is not effective.
right.
And the reason why is because what they do is they do surveillance of flu vaccines around the world.
Mhm.
And then they pick usually three
Mhm. Okay. I got
forms
you.
of it, and they put that in the vaccine.
Mhm.
Well, they make a mistake. And they didn't
Might
pick the
miss
right
one.
one. That's right.
Miss-
Then that one became the prominent one, and there's no protection for that in the vaccine.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've been like I said, man. The last time I had flu was I guess about 13, 14 years ago, and I missed my stepmother's funeral because I was laying up with about 103-degree fever, and I just couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed. Yeah, but I have an immunity toward flu that maybe it's just built up, and so I don't. Even though when I'm around people with the flu, I tend to not
Yeah, if
get
you're going to be immune to it, you're not going to get it. It doesn't matter of the exposure because your body, it's just like, I mean, it has the ability to resist it.
What's the difference between the flu and the RSV virus?
Okay, well, they're different classes
Okay.
of virus. Okay, they're both viruses.
Hmm.
Okay, that's a respiratory
Right.
virus.
Right.
The flu is also a respiratory virus.
Okay.
And what that means is that it can be spread by aerosolization or coughing or things like
Right.
that,
Right.
as opposed to a virus that's like on a surface and it
Okay.
doesn't spread through the air. Respiratory viruses are more deadly and more infectious because of the way they transmit
Right.
themselves.
Right. Now, I
We have all types of viruses, many different types.
okay.
And actually, viruses are like the uh, main thing that we don't really have any cures or treatments for.
Hmm.
Like we have treatments for bacteria,
Mm.
but viruses, no. There's not really any effective treatments for viruses. And our most effective treatments, all they really do is just decrease the amount of time
Okay.
that the virus is active,
Right.
but they don't eradicate it.
Interesting. Now, like I was mentioning that I had been in the hospital for about RSV, and it's not the virus, but it's the effect when you have other comorbidities. When I went to the hospital, they got the mask on me and everything. They said, "Well, what do you have?" And I said, "Well, asthma." They said, "Yeah, that's why you're here." You know what I mean? Because I had asthma that kind of came back. I had it as a child, but then it came back. As an adult, over 65, man,
Right,
eventually.
right, and that's going to be a issue because with those viruses, uh, the number one cause of
Mhm.
death, if you look at death certificate,
Mhm.
is going to be pneumonia.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So,
But I
so if you get the virus, and that virus is going to leave you susceptible to pneumonia, and
Right.
pneumonia is what's going to kick you
Who's
over.
going to kick you over?
That's right.
You're right. And that's what when I first couldn't breathe, I said, man, my little cold just turned it into pneumonia. And that's when I went to the hospital, and that's when they just said you got the RSV virus.
Right.
And I was in the hospital for it seemed like 5 long days. And then right at the end, the doc said you can stay another day or two, but you're not going to get any better. It's just
Right.
going to take time to wear
Right.
off.
Yeah, yeah. So what I encourage people to do is now another thing too is people do the wrong thing
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how they treat it. So the first thing,
People do the wrong thing.
well,
The
yeah,
physicians.
well, the people that are giving them advice, people do what they're told to do, and they do the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Right.
Okay, so you should always follow what your body tells you to
Mhm.
do. Your body is very smart, and it doesn't really need any help from a doctor. It knows what it's supposed to do. So what's the first thing a person does when they get a cold?
Mhm.
Well, they take antihistamines, so they take anti-cough medicines, all of that stuff. And that's defeating the purpose of the body. The body is coughing and making phlegm and stuff to try to get rid of the stuff. Why would you stop it up?
Right.
I never understand why people do that. It's not a logical thing to do.
I can give you the logic behind it. The companies push it because they want you to keep working. They don't want you to miss days of work. That's why it behooves corporate America to promote these drugs so that you can go to work.
Right, they don't care the situation.
Right.
So what I tell people to do is, if your body is making phlegm, then encourage it. Spit it out, cough it up.
Mhm.
Well, and see, the other thing people do is when they take those antihistamines, then all of that mucus and stuff, it turns hard like
Right.
concrete and
Oh.
blocks up their sinuses.
Right.
Now they got migraine headaches and all of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
When all they had to do was get rid of it.
Uh-huh.
Don't block up yourself.
Right.
If your body is coughing, if it's spitting up stuff, encourage it to do
Mhm.
that. It's got a reason why it's doing that.
Oh.
And you should never work against that reason.
And Jay, we're having a discussion about just medicine and medical issues here on Doc Robinson's House Calls. And the link is in the chat. So if you hit on the link, you can come on in and ask your questions. Like and subscribe, but please hit the link and ask a question so that we can put the word out that there's a real doctor in the house and he's answering real questions.
So, that was the thing with the coronavirus. So one of the symptoms of the coronavirus was a non-productive cough.
Right. And I'll tell you something, because I got COVID. And all I remember I called one of the doctors, talked to this Jamaican sister on the phone. And I said, the only thing I'm having is this cough that won't go away.
That's right.
I said, other than that, I got no fever, my bowels and everything. I ain't pissing up a storm, And she gave me this cough drop. It's a prescription cough pill. And I use that whenever I sing, because it helps smooth out my vocal cords.
Uh-huh.
And it makes it easy when I go sing. I sing in a choir, I sing in a gospel group. Yeah. I'm a singer too. David's got multifaceted.
But you see my point?
But
That's a bad sign if you're not coughing this stuff up.
That's true.
You got to get rid of that junk and
Right.
get rid of it.
Right.
Because if it settles into your lung,
Yeah.
that's going to cause you some problems.
Yeah, then you're going to have to
That's
be
right.
in a whole different ward of the hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah, come a long way from the iron lung. Now they can do most of that with face mask and a couple of pills.
Hmm.
Well,
that was the other thing too with the ventilators,
Mhm.
because they didn't know how to use the ventilators at the very beginning.
Right.
Now, I'll never forget it. I was a resident at
Mhm.
Harlem Hospital,
Hmm.
and I had a patient. Now, I don't think that there was anything that you were going to do with that patient that would have made a difference. It was
Mhm.
it was terminal.
Mhm.
She had something called COPD,
Okay. Yeah,
which is
that's generally you get from smoking.
smoking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a progressive disease.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse.
What you want to do is if you have it, you want to just slow
Right.
the progression.
Exactly.
Slow it down as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was the respiratory therapist put her on a ventilator, and that was a rapid decline.
Mhm.
She was much better off left alone to fight in herself,
Mhm.
because once she got on that ventilator, then she stopped, fighting,
Mhm.
and then she developed a mucus plug. and then that killed her.
Right. Wow. Yeah. You know, so it seems like oftentimes these medical miracles aren't miracles at all. You know, they sometimes that medical miracle can be in very specific patients detrimental.
Yeah, well, remember, it's still an art. It's not a fixed science.
That's
And,
right.
you know, I mean, we know percentage wise,
Uh,
but we don't know individually how most of this stuff is going to turn out.
now, that's a good point. I read yesterday or day before about AI and AI analyzing, and they did a test in some medical institution. I think it might have been in England, where they had three levels that they did with AI. They did a doctor doing an analysis without AI. They did a doctor doing analysis with AI, and they did AI doing the analysis by itself. And it turns out that the doctor using AI did the second best job, but AI alone did a better job of analyzing the information that was put in and coming up with the correct diagnosis. What impact do you think this artificial intelligence, is going to have going forward?
Now, you see, that's variable,
Mhm.
okay? Because it has a lot to do with the experience of the doctor as well.
Okay, and that's one thing that came out in this test, the experience of the doctor.
Yeah, because like many, see, first of all, medicine has become quantitative and qualitative in
Hmm.
terms of what they call evidence-based practice.
Hmm.
Okay, so in evidence-based practice, there has to be a statistic or a reason behind whatever you do.
Hmm.
Things don't work that way.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And sometimes when you have a feeling or you have a experience or what happened to somebody else that was in the same situation,
Mhm.
and that overrides that evidence-based thing.
Mhm.
And one of the major things is race-based
Mhm.
medicine
Mhm.
because everyone doesn't respond the same way to certain types of drugs and situations.
Okay.
And it's dependent on your genetic structure. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Asthma.
Mhm.
So there was a class of asthma medicines that they were using, but black people that had untoward or bad effects
Mhm.
toward that
Mhm.
medicine.
Mhm.
We also know that even in cancer therapy and things like that, there are genetic differences, different receptors, things like that, which make a difference in the way that medicine works.
Mhm.
So a doctor that's experienced, with various races of people and so forth, he knows from experience, oh, well, no, you don't give that person that medicine because they are not going to do as well.
Mhm.
Let's take, for example, standard treatment for, say, something like high blood pressure.
Okay.
Okay. So there are several ways to approach it. You can approach it by the contractility of the heart,
Okay.
or you can approach it by the blood vessels. You can dilate or
Right.
or make
Right.
the blood vessels bigger.
Right.
So all of that will lower the pressure.
Right.
But we know that the black people, because of their genetic things, the uh, fluid dynamic is more important than the contractility of the heart.
Okay.
So they're not going to do as well on beta blockers as opposed to a diuretic.
Mhm. Okay.
So when I have a person, that comes in, that first thing I'm going to do with that person is I'm going to put them on a diuretic.
That's a black person.
That's right.
You're more prone to.
That's right. If it's a white person, I'm more prone to put them on a beta blocker.
Okay. Okay. Now, 20 years ago, there was actually a drug that came out that was targeted to the black community for its for its health, for its heart benefit. I forget what drug it was. It came out about 20 years ago, and I remember working with a doctor out in California who was one of the early prescribers of it. Dr. Lenore out in Oakland. He schooled me on that whole company that had done it, and the company actually got certified. This drug certified through the FDA as a racially targeted heart medicine,
Okay.
and that was virtually unheard of at the time. But in all of the tests that were done, they did it, and the test showed up that this particular drug worked better in African Americans than it did in the general society. I had assumed that there was going to be more experimentation behind that, but there hasn't been much.
Yeah, well, what I find is that you can't approach a person from a purely scientific and a clinical sense.
No, you can't.
It doesn't work because you have to have a feeling for the individual. Well, you know what I always tell people? I say there's one thing that makes a good doctor,
Mhm.
and that is that he cares about the person he's taking care of.
One thing I learned in sales, and my first sales
Yeah.
job was at Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company when I was in college. This was over 50 years ago. But they said that if you want to get through to somebody, demonstrate that you care.
That's
And a
right.
person doesn't want to know, doesn't care about what you know until they know that you care. So if they know that the doctor cares about them, two things are going to happen. One, they're going to tell them more.
That's right.
And two, the doctor is going to be able to see through the more information he's getting from the patient to find out what the real.
That's right. Because if you care about something, you want to do the best.
Right.
So look, everybody doesn't know. I mean, even doctors don't know everything.
Yeah.
But if you care, you're going to go the extra mile to try to find out.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that that's the one thing
Mhm.
that makes a doctor, you know, that he
Sure.
cares about the people because he's going to do the best he can
Right.
with the situation that he has.
Now, much of your background is caring for people at a very macroeconomic level because, you know, you deal with not only, 10 or 20 patients, you deal with tens of thousands when you were administrator in the city.
Yeah, we had 100,000 patients in the district health centers.
Mm.
And when you get to that level, you can't deal with them in terms of individuals.
Right.
You have to deal with it in terms of protocols.
Right.
Okay. So doctors have very bad habits.
No, they
Okay.
do.
And it's hard to break them out of their habits.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So even though you have guidelines and you have established ways to do things, when you do the analysis, you find the doctors don't follow it.
Mhm.
Okay. Now you can script them and make them do it,
I'm
but
gonna
then over time they go back and do it the same
I'm
way.
going to give you an example. In Chicago, I don't know how many years ago, because I followed this whole medical thing in media for a while. In one of the hospitals, they changed the protocol for how they brought in people who were having heart attacks. And by changing the protocol, the death rate went down from like 50% of the people brought in down to about 20%. Now but they changed the protocol.
Right.
They changed into the procedures when they were brought in, the tests that they were running and everything. So you're right that many doctors don't follow a very strict prescribed protocol.
Yeah, so it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. The patient doesn't know.
The
The
patient
patient has no idea of what's going on with
Okay.
this. So I tried, and it'll work short term.
Mhm,
You can script them.
mhm.
So I mean, there are what you call a flow chart.
Right.
So FX do Y, you know, if this go here, and then you have like a branch, and then
Right.
you have the branch so that with this condition you make this decision, with this condition you make that decision,
Right.
and then you branch.
But how much of that is taught?
It's not taught. You just have to follow it.
Got
And
it.
you got to check. Did you check this? Yes. Did you do this test? Yes. Did you do that? Yes. Like that. So you just a checkbox.
Right.
And as long as you follow all of the check boxes, then you have done the appropriate care.
Okay.
But that doesn't work because first of all, it's not sustainable.
Mhm.
Because as soon as you come to a situation where you don't have the check thing and the chart and the cheat is not there,
Then they fall back to what they know.
That's
Hey,
right.
This
That's
is Big
right.
Gator talking to Dr. Lawrence Robinson. And we're talking about very, 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 very. Actually, there's simple health issues that come across oftentimes when a doctor is explaining them. They seem more complex than they are. And one of the benefits of sitting with Dr. Robinson, who I've known for a couple of years now, is being able to break it down so Joe Schmo in the community can understand what he's talking about, and more importantly, why getting health checkups on a regular basis is so important.
Well, it's prevention.
Yeah.
But I think Ben Franklin said it best.
Mhm.
He said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
So this our medical system. Our medical system is based on cure.
Our
It's not
medical
based
system, I
on
like to say
prevention.
our medical system is based on dis-ease or
Exactly.
disease.
Right.
It's not based on you being healthy. It's based on you
You
getting
being sick.
sick,
That's right.
and then they're trying to make you healthy. But if you start out basically healthy, you'll be less sick. And
Right.
then the whole medical system says, oh, we need them sick. That's almost the way I look at it, man. They want you sick. And like for instance, my mother died about 25 years ago, and I remember what they did, and what they did was they started prescribing all these different medications, and I still swear to the day that it was the treatment that killed her more so than the disease.
Oh, undoubtedly,
Yeah.
undoubtedly, and I've had similar experiences, but I would look at it from a different perspective.
Okay.
It's when they interface with
Uh-huh.
you.
Okay.
So they don't even consider the prevention part. That's not even part of the
Oh,
model.
no, it's not.
You see what I'm saying? Because the person doesn't show up in front of the doctor until they have something wrong with them.
Right.
But what you're looking at is an entirely different concept, and that is that they show up to the doctor before there's anything wrong with them.
Right.
That doesn't work because the reimbursement doesn't pay for it.
That's true.
When you go reimburse, you have to have a diagnosis code.
Mhm.
The diagnosis code has to be some illness or some disease or some procedure
Mhm.
in order to get billed or paid.
Mhm.
There's no diagnosis code for other than what you get once a year wellness visit
Mhm.
when you get your
Wow.
Medicaid.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
true.
know, other than that, no.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? You have to have a diagnosis code in order to bill.
Yeah. I am one of the few black men, quote unquote brothers, I know who's got 5 doctors on speed dial. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm going to a doctor at least every month. And the reality is I am, but every time I go to these doctors, they say, well, you're all right. You're all right. You're all right. Just take these and you'll be all right. Continue your meds and you'll be all right. Because I've been on a daily asthma medicine and some prostate issues, so that seem to affect black men more.
Well, there's no doubt about that. That actually runs in my family. All of the men in my family have died from prostate cancer.
Okay.
My father, my grandfather, my uncles, all of them had prostate
Now,
cancer.
was it the prostate cancer that killed him, or was it the prostate cancer in conjunction with age?
The prostate didn't kill them because they were all like up in their 90s and stuff. They usually died, like my father died from a stroke.
Uh-huh. Okay.
You know, he had high blood pressure and he wasn't taking his medicine.
Oh,
So he
okay.
had one stroke, he got fine, then he got another stroke, he was paralyzed, then the final stroke is what killed him.
Okay.
So the prostate cancer was just one added thing on it.
Right.
And a lot of people say that it's worse to know about the prostate cancer because it causes you to worry and unnecessary procedures and stuff to be done. So I know some panels have actually suggested that you should just watch and wait and that you really shouldn't, especially if you're older in age, prostate
I'm
cancer.
older in age because I've had 2 urologists, and I'm up to 4 biopsies, and I'm in my mid-70s.
Well, listen, you have to figure it this way. Just knowing the nature of the prostate, you're going to have a positive biopsy.
Mhm.
It's the nature of it. I mean, it's an organ that divides and it makes sperm and it makes cells and so forth. The cancer is just cells that divide.
Right.
And then every now and then one goes astray.
Right.
So that's inevitable
Mhm.
that the prostate cancer over time is going to develop
Right.
just because the cells are dividing.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because one thing about prostate cancer is that it grows very slowly.
Mhm.
Okay. So you know, by the time that prostate cancer gets to the stage where it's causing some problems, you usually, and it is true, you got some other issues that
Yeah.
go along with it.
Yeah.
In my the case with my relatives, they didn't have any of the other risk factors.
Mhm.
So they weren't like smokers, they weren't drinkers, you know. So
So
they're gonna be around for a while before that got.
a drinker,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're a male, a black male with prostate cancer. Lord have mercy.
Exactly,
You make my life
exactly.
boring.
So my father
I want
was
to live a boring
my father was
life.
97,
Right. Okay.
and he had prostate cancer. Like I said, I wouldn't let them do anything to it.
Right. Right.
I'd say, well, listen, he's not complaining.
Mhm.
So if he's not complaining, why you gonna mess with it?
Mhm.
I think he was diagnosed. I think he was 87.
Wow.
And all that time, I did nothing. They wanted to do liver biopsy. I said, why? I said, I already know it's prostate cancer. What's a liver biopsy going to tell me?
Yeah.
His father had it, my uncle had it, and so forth, so he got it too. Why I need you to do a liver biopsy?
Mhm.
To tell me something that I already know.
They did it, and when I got it, they did a bone density scan
Yeah.
to see if
Oh,
if metastasized.
right. Well, that's how they found it. He didn't even know he had it.
Mhm.
So he fell
There you
and
go.
broke his
There
hip.
you go. Yeah.
And then when they did the bone sound, they found spots.
There you go. There you go. I'm talking to Doc House Calls with Lawrence Robinson, MD, MPH. And, if you're interested, if you have any questions, go into the chat and click on Dr. Robinson's House Calls if you want to come in virtually, or if you just want to have a question, sign into the chat and chat up your question. Just hit it in there. And while you're there, live and subscribe. You know what the word is. We got these podcasts, ain't nothing new. And I've been very blessed to know Doc Robinson for a while. And we're just sitting here talking about different issues regarding health. And specifically, since he's African American and I'm Black, these issues can sometimes deal with the racial aspects of medicine in America. So, Dr. Robinson, recently you and I were at the National Medical Association, and I always find that to be quite interesting. The problem I had with us going there was, why are so much of the doctors being influenced by the drug companies, man? Because the drug companies were there as much as the doctors.
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah.
And they tried to put a stop to that because I remember back in the day when they used to give us trips to
Oh,
Reno
yes,
and all
yes,
sorts of stuff,
yes,
Jamaica, and
yes.
all of that. I mean, those were the golden days with the drug companies giving perks and stuff to the doctors, and in
Right.
terms of getting them to push their drugs.
Right.
So I'm a conservative doctor. Okay,
Okay.
it's always been my nature to be conservative.
Okay.
I don't like to change stuff.
Mhm.
I don't like to try all of the newfangled stuff.
Mhm.
I like to stick with what I have experience with and what I know.
Okay.
So one of the things that I find, and I'll give you a perfect example, is that a lot of doctors, the rep will come with some new medicine that they tout with these studies as being a
Mhm.
miracle and
Yeah.
give free samples.
Right.
And then they give that to, I don't give no free samples to my patients. Let somebody else try those drugs. You know what I'm saying?
When I was a younger man, they were giving out free samples of Viagra, and I had to try, and I didn't complain, and none of the female companions complained. So I was like,
Yeah, but I mean, but if you're in good shape, you don't need that Viagra.
logical.
Yeah,
And so much of the drugs
right.
that's a drug that is all psychological.
Placebo, they call it.
Yeah. Well, it's not. Viagra is not a placebo. I mean, it's actually a heart drug, and it was designed as a heart.
It opens up the blood vessels so
Correct.
blood can flow through it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But you're right. I remember when the doctors were coming through, and my mother. I first got it from my mother's doctor, who was a woman, and she's like, "Here." I said, "Yeah, well, you got any?" She said, "Here,
Yeah,
try
try
it." And she
it.
pumped it to me. I'm like, "Oh, this stuff ain't bad, man." And it was. I
Right.
couldn't figure out whether it was psychological or physiological. All I know was,
Probably a combination of the two.
Okay.
But the reality is that intimacy is more than just an erection.
Yeah.
So even if so, there are other ways to deal with the situation.
As we get deeper into our discussions on house calls, intimacy is one area that we will have long discussions because we have a few doctors lined up that'll come on and talk about intimacy and why it's important, how you can deal with it, especially from a male point of view, especially from a Black male point of view. We have a physician who I happen to meet at the NMA, who's got some excellent ideas and excellent discussion on that. Dr. Lawrence Robinson, I want to thank you for doing this. Oh, we can continue going? How many viewers do we have? 100, 1,000, 10,000? Come on.
100 million.
But are we running out of time though for the studio?
Okay, I got a guy in the background saying we can keep talking, So again, if you
Well, the guy here is looking at us.
we got 5 minutes. If you want something in the chat, you can go in there in the chat. There's a link that you can click on, and you can come on, and we can see you. You can ask a question. You can have a little discussion with Dr. Lawrence Robinson on house calls. Now, when we started house calls, we were playing around names, and one of the names we came up with was house calls. Why did house calls go away in the medical profession? Now I'm young enough or old enough to remember
I remember a
when a
doctor
doctor would
used,
come to
yeah,
your house.
I'm old enough to remember that too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So things have become a lot more technical.
Okay.
So things are based on the hospital.
So you
So
can't
you've
take
got
your bag, your hospital bag.
nobody has any reliance in that anymore.
Okay.
So they have to have independent laboratory studies.
Mhm.
They have to have MRIs. They've got to have CAT scans. They've got to have cardiac cath. You know, you got all this technical stuff. You can't do that with a house call.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And not only that, but not only house call, but house call is a single or a solitary physician.
Right.
That's gone now.
Yeah. That's
Everything is all groups.
right.
You know, it's very rare that you find a doctor that works in a
Solo
box of,
technician.
yeah,
A
it's
single
almost
solo
non-existent
technician.
now. So it has to deal with a group or multi, specialties
Mhm.
together in a center or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you can't take that to a house.
Okay.
Now, you do have programs like the Life program and very senior programs where they still do send people
Mhm.
to the house,
Mm-hmm.
but those are specialized programs that you have to become a member
And
of.
most of them are either a disability related
Or aging,
or
yeah.
age related.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Because I know that I
They also do that to a rehab too.
right.
Because my sister had her knee replaced, and they actually sent the doctor out that
Mhm.
looked at the wound and all of that, and the nurse came out and did that.
Mm-hmm.
So that exists, but it's not to the same extent.
Well, one thing that they have, way back, 50, 60 years ago, a lot of it was done in-house. For instance, if you had some of these procedures that were done, they kept you in the hospital to do it. Today, they want to get you out of the hospital, and it's cheaper to send people to your home to help you with rehabbing your knee or your hip if you have hip surgery or something like that. Yeah, yeah. I guess the economics of medicine in America is as it's as crazy as
Well, then you have malpractice and all of that. So people are not willing to base their decisions based on their feelings or whatever.
right.
They have to have objective measures
Mhm.
because if you get to court, that's what'll stand up. You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So a lot of it is done to protect you against malpractice,
Uh-huh.
these issues, because you have definitive standards that you can show
Right.
if there becomes a challenge.
Right. So therefore, they want you in the doctor's office and the doctor is not in your home.
Right.
Well, interesting. One last thing about the medical field, and I'll go into the sports area. Sports medicine, specifically about men and women's sports. Is there a major impact on that going on in America? Because the Democrats, so much of their platform was pro transgender, and the Republicans ran on that anti-transgender platform quite successfully. Kamala Harris did not win, but the Republicans spent millions, tens of millions of dollars on supporting anti-trans
Well,
on the internet. And they talk about if you went there on the internet and were looking at that stuff, you had an anti-trans commercial from the Republicans.
well, it's the whole issue of who can use the bathroom.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't really care. I think it's a lot to do about nothing. I mean, I think that we should be fair.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't agree with having a full-grown man, that just had the, competing against a woman. You have to be fair about it. But then, it's a decision I think that has to be taken on a
My
case-by-case
position
basis.
is if you ask one of the greatest tennis players, who was Serena Williams, and Serena Williams says, look, if I had to compete with men, I might not even be in the top 1,500. You know what I mean? But she's like one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Dr. Lawrence Robinson, we got a question. Well, let me look at it before we wrap this up. We got a question. Okay, the last question that we're going to deal with is individuals dealing with high blood pressure. We got that question in the chat, and we're going to use that as a question before we go out. It's diagnosis and treatment. In the Black community, especially, I'm going to assume that this question might be from an African American, but I'm not sure. Because it wasn't in the chat.
Doesn't really matter. No,
Okay, good.
you got the right person here because I was an expert in hypertension. In fact, in my younger days, I was the director of the hypertension program at Harlem Hospital.
Okay.
So I know quite a bit about high blood pressure.
Mhm.
Okay, so what we did was we did something very special. We took echocardiograms
Mhm.
of people,
Okay.
and with person that has high blood pressure, they have an enlarged heart.
Right.
So when you do the echo, the heart is enlarged. Okay. So we randomized the people based on that
Mm-hmm.
to a traditional, where we gave them traditional drugs, diuretics and, beta blockers and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had what we called the non-traditional
Mm-hmm.
high blood pressure group.
Okay.
Okay, so that group, we did weight loss. We had exercise programs. We had nutritional counseling. We had stress management programs, all of that. This was in the non-traditional program.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the program, we compared the two groups.
Okay.
Which group do you think did better in terms of controlling their high blood pressure?
The group that had systemic changes
That's right.
in their eating, drinking, and everything, lifestyle change.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
We're going to have to go because they're turning the
so
lights out.
it's lifestyle changes that are better than drugs. Okay. Yeah. So from Dr. Lawrence Robinson, we want to thank you for coming out and doing some house calls. And we'll be back doing house calls on Tuesday. But look for it, and we'll be sending that out. And for everybody that was in the chat and that clicked on, we want to thank you. But send out the link, and this is Big Data for house callers.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.